the salvation for me not jumping was, wow, but if I did so many mistakes and I was still able to amass those companies, and my net worth was around 15 million US before the loss. So that's why I say I lost 20 million altogether. I just ended up five in minus, but because I had a good cushion before that. But if I was able to, with all those mistakes, do that, imagine what I can do if I make better choices, if I change my habits, if I choose different people. I can do it again. I can do it better. And that was that little ray of light. I didn't know how, but it was just enough of a light at the end of a huge, long ass tunnel that, wow, I can actually get myself out of it. Because before that moment, I saw no way out.
Welcome to the last episode in 2020 of the Onward podcast. I know we are all looking forward to a much better 2021. My name is Emily Harmon, and I'm the host of the Onward podcast. In 2009, my guest, Miha Matlievski, had 4 companies go bankrupt overnight, landing him $5 million in debt. Contemplating suicide to escape the pain as he looked over the balcony, he had a life-saving aha moment. Miha realized that failure was a normal part of life. And in this aha moment, he admitted to himself that he had failed, but he also recognized that he needed to stop blaming others and circumstances. This was the turning moment, the turning point, when he made a choice to learn from his failures so he could do things differently in the future and to help others. Since then, Miha has climbed back to create a business and scaling it to 8 figures in less than 1 year. And his life mission is to help people develop a healthy relationship with failure, especially entrepreneurs. But you don't need to be an entrepreneur to learn from this episode. We all face quote unquote failure in our lives. After we concluded the interview, Miha remembered one thing that he wanted to share. And so I'm going to play this excerpt for you up front. And it was something that he wanted to share about the fear of regret. So I'm going to play that, and then we're going to get right into the interview.
The fear of regret. I've learned that through my grandmother on my mom's side. She died so full of regret, really so full of regret. And I'm scared to death of regret. So whenever I'm presented with something challenging, new, out of my comfort zone, I rather do it, no matter how crazy, hard, challenging, whatever it is, than one day maybe regretting. So I think fear of regrets is really the only fear that actually serves you if you do it right.
Miha, welcome to the Onward podcast. I'm so excited that you're here. This is going to be an awesome interview.
Well, thank you. And it's a pleasure to be here. And yeah, I hope it will be very valuable as well for your audience.
I know it will. I know I will have already read your introduction, but let me just say, you've had 4 companies go bankrupt overnight. That was in 2009. And you got $5 million in debt and you contemplated suicide, but then you had an aha moment. So I'm really excited to hear what you learned. And how do you handle that? I've never even made 5 million in my life, so I don't know what it would be like to lose 5 million.
Well, it's difficult to handle it, especially when everybody's calling you. The thing was, one of my businesses was in real estate. I was an investor in a big real estate project. And it all came down to the bank loaning me money to develop that real estate project. We were halfway through it. And then the crisis, the last recession, the bank said, okay, we better get out right now. The bank went for all my other companies because here in Europe, when you sign a loan, your companies and you personally, you go as a collateral. And then they don't have to go to the court. They just go and file those papers and just swoosh, the money goes to them. And so they called me one Monday morning. It was December 7th, 2009. Monday morning, I got a call. We are out because right now, the losses will be less than if we just continue to the end. And they went for all the money, all the assets. And literally next day, Tuesday, I was already 5 million in personal debt. I lost altogether about 20 million for companies. Later on, I got divorced and so on. So there was a whole lot of different things that went into that.
Were you anticipating or were you like expecting that call? Were you thinking it could come?
No. I had no idea that that's coming. And the thing was, they took money from all my other businesses. So instead of owing money just to one big bank, which could probably handle a 5 million loss, let's be honest, they took money from my other businesses. So I ended up owing money to our suppliers, employees, and like the little businesses and so on. And so instead of having one call every now and then from the bank, I woke up every morning to 20, 30 calls. So my whole morning was just people calling me, threatening me. It wasn't like, oh, we're going to sue you. That was a nice call. They told me like, we're going to do strange things to your legs and to this and to that and so on. And, back then, when you are in such an emotional state, I firmly believe that that's what's going to happen. I mean, now looking back, I know it was just a strategy to push me because maybe they thought I have a hidden bank account in Switzerland or something like that. And that will help push me so that they would get the money back sooner or something like that. But, looking back, you see a lot of different things. But back then, I truly believed it.
Yeah. And let me ask a question. I don't think that could happen in the US, right? I mean, because I'm just thinking, I have a limited liability corporation, LLC. So I think, I don't know.
No, with good asset protection in place, that can't happen in Europe as well. I just didn't know about any of that. I was, young entrepreneur, full of everything, going into everything with all my heart. Now, I wouldn't co-sign anything. If you give me the money for the project, cool. If you're not, I'm just going to move to the next project. I would never do something like that again. But back then, I was around 30, 29, 30, something like that.
So you contemplated suicide. I know I would contemplate it too. It just seems like that's the ease. That's just, you don't have to deal with all that. I would.
The first reaction is, how can I solve this? And then you start brainstorming and those calls coming in and you make a list of a few things that you can try. And then you do try and everything is a no. And then you're like, oh shit, there's really no solution to this. And then, little by little, you go into depression, the anxiety, the stress, then the darkness starts creeping in. So it wasn't like I wanted to do suicide next day.
Right.
It took me a few months until early spring 2010, when one day I got notice that the apartment I'm living in will be finally taken away as well. And so I was on the balcony, 5th floor, smoking a cigarette. And so I still don't know how that really happened, but I just got up and climbed on the other side of the fence. And I was literally holding myself with my left hand, inclined over, looking down. And the thing was, I wasn't on the 20th floor. 20th floor, you jump, you die. 5th floor, things can happen. And as I was looking down, I was like, am I going to do this right? Or am I just going to end up on a wheelchair? Because for me, why I wanted to kill myself wasn't to escape the debt or anything, but my head was like a permanent nuclear reactor. I didn't have a minute of silence and solitude and just to calm down and clear my head for a little bit. Everything was just racing, past, future, this, that, calls, threats, like so many things happening in here. And so that was why I wanted to really do it. And then the aha moment came. It's hard to explain it, because it's hard to find the right words. It was almost like, how in comedy movies you see that devil and the angel popping up. It was almost like two Mihas separated. And so this one Miha starts yelling at the other Miha, why did you not find a lawyer? Why did you sign that? Why did you do this and that? The thing was, in the last recession, it was so easy to find blame outside of you. The Lehman Brothers Bank, the politicians, the banks, you can blame it on everything outside of you. And when you do that, you put yourself into a passive situation and you can't do shit about it. And so that was the first time when it was you. And I realized that at the end of the day, it was my decisions, things I did, things I didn't do, choices I made. people I decided to work with and partner with, and so on. It was all me. I had nobody else but myself to blame for where I got. Now, the funny thing that was the salvation for me not jumping was, wow, but if I did so many mistakes and I was still able to amass those companies, and my net worth was around 15 million US before the loss. So that's why I say I lost 20 million altogether. I just ended up five in minus, but because I had a good cushion before that. But if I was able to, with all those mistakes, do that, imagine what I can do if I make better choices, if I change my habits, if I choose different people. I can do it again. I can do it better. And that was that little ray of light. I didn't know how, but it was just enough of a light at the end of a huge, long ass tunnel that, wow, I can actually get myself out of it. Because before that moment, I saw no way out. And, like, why would I even continue living? And this whole thing in my head, it's not worth it. And then I saw this tiny little ray of light. I climbed back in. I went to my desk. I sat down, pen, paper, and I just started writing all of the things I need to change, what I need to learn. It was a huge ass list. Believe me,
You took
like a roll of
responsibility.
toilet paper.
Yeah. Instead of blaming everybody else, you looked within yourself. What can you change?
Yeah. And that was like that big aha moment that changed everything. And then at first, I was thinking, not that I failed, but I am a failure. Because
That's the difference,
a lot
right?
of the time.
There's a difference. I failed or I am a failure. That's not the same thing.
Yeah. And then as I started working on my personal development, on my business development, after all of that, I started seeing the positives in what has happened, the positive in when you fail, and not when you fail, but how you react. Because the right relationship with failure is a logical one, not an emotional one. Emotions cloud your vision. Logical one, because you fail for three things and three things only. Maybe your goals are not set in a smart way, because most often we set goals when we're emotional, either negative emotions and we want to change everything and revolutionize, and starting tomorrow in the next month I will lose 100 pounds. I can say that. Or we are highly emotional, like you're outside hanging out with your friends. Oh, tomorrow we go to, I don't know, to Bali, and we'll stay there for a few months. But then, the reality kicks in. So the first thing is usually the goals are not set in a smart way, which is SMRT, SMART.
Measurable, time-related.
Specific, measurable, realistic, attainable, and time. So that's number one. Number two is nothing just happens. Everything is a result of steps beforehand, of a process. If I want to lose 10 pounds, I have to exercise, eat less, eat healthier. It's a process. It's not, I'm going to lose and bam, now I lost it. Right. So we have to look at the process. And for the process, we need to be logical. We need to look at measures, KPIs, things like that. And so it can be either of the two things. Maybe you had bottlenecks in your process and you didn't saw them and you didn't eliminate them, or you were doing the wrong steps. Now, to go from the losing weight, because I'm an expert in that, if I say, I want to lose 10 pounds, but then I go to McDonald's every day, well, that would be, an example of doing all the wrong steps. And of course, I would gain 10 pounds or 20, not lose 10. But then maybe the bottlenecks would be I'm eating healthy. I'm just putting too many calories in myself. I'm eating salads and bananas and all of that, but I eat a whole bunch of bananas for breakfast instead of just one. And so that would be, like the bottlenecks that you have to figure out. And either one of those three things, that's how failure happens. And that's not a bad thing, because when you examine the failure, when you react logically, so you have nothing to bounce back from, you can learn so much from either resetting the goals and making them more in a smart way, or finding the bottlenecks, or figuring out maybe better steps that are more aligned with the goal that I want to reach. Finding help outside, learning something new, brainstorming by yourself, Googling. There's a whole bunch of ways how you can overcome that. But that's how innovation happens. That's how growth happens. And in my opinion, and this is something I'm always telling my clients, is that failure mindset, establishing healthy relationship with failure is the base of innovation. And it's something that a company that does that as a cultural thing will progress faster than the competitors. And it's your business opportunity because you will innovate faster. You will be ahead of the competition who is afraid to fail.
Yes, and
that's the reality.
Yeah, I spent 38 years working for the Navy, and the Navy has a risk-adverse culture, which is understandable, especially I worked a lot in naval aviation, where the risk of not getting something right is the pilot dies and the plane crashes and the plane costs a lot of money, right? So it's a risk-adverse culture. And then
but the companies developing all that new technology, they have to be in a different framework or mindset, because otherwise we would never have planes lifting up like helicopters. We would never have the bombs like they are with all the lasers and whatnot and the guidance systems and the drones and so on, if the companies who are in charge of research and development, like in pharmacy, failure is a normal thing. The companies developing the vaccine, they had to go through thousands, probably tens of thousands of different variations, so that now we have a few really solid candidates, and eventually we'll have, I guess, I don't know, 1, 2, 3 vaccines, but they have to go through a whole bunch of different things and really fail fast and fail forward. Otherwise, we will never get there if they would just want to do one example and nail it on the first try. It doesn't work that way.
You're right. And the companies have to be innovative. But I think that I'm speaking as a whole, and the government's really trying to work on that. But, a lot of government, and the culture in the government is risk adverse, because what happens? You get called up in front of Congress and chewed out if there's a mistake made, right? And really, a mistake or a failure could lead to learning something. So I know that the Navy's working on that, and I know the military is working on that, and they're getting less risk adverse. But so how do you?
That's why I'm trying to go on as many podcasts and use as many opportunities to talk about. I want us to break the taboo that failure is something bad and really get to people so that they understand that the more you embrace failure, the more you embrace this new mentality, new mindset around failure, the faster you actually achieve success, the more successful you will be, the more innovation you will drive, the more ahead of your competitors you will be. And I mean, 20, 30 years ago, the world was not turning as fast as it's turning today. With the globalization, with technology, things change like this outside of you that you can't, like, I can't influence if, I don't know, Mark Zuckerberg wakes up tomorrow and says, "Oh, I'm going to change the algorithm." And suddenly, like what Apple just did a few weeks ago with iOS 14, they disabled, like I read a story yesterday from Facebook that they're frightened how the revenue will come from ads because Apple is now not allowing any tracking, and installing Facebook Pixel was the thing that you do so that you spend money on ads. So what will happen there? And something like that, one announcement from Apple can change your whole business model.
Yeah. So how do you recommend somebody who's afraid of failure, how do you recommend they start changing their mindset towards failure? Do they start on like small things, or do they start on a big project? Do they meditate? I mean, what are some tips you have for changing your mindset around failure, especially if you're like 50 and you've got a whole history of thinking one way?
Well, I mean, it's a different process for everybody, depending how you are as a human being. But one of the things, yes, you have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And, maybe you push yourself through some bigger things. With a lot of my clients, we don't even start with the business first, but with their personal life, because that's something that they're more willing to do and to try something new, to challenge themselves and so on. And then slowly build up that resilience that, being open to change and to failing is not a bad thing. And then we migrate onto the business thing. And there's also these soft skills to develop, like mindfulness, like being mindful, emotional intelligence. And then love a little bit for the numbers and KPIs and measuring things and being open to permanent beta. So let go of the perfection. Everything is just permanent beta. It's not carved in stone. You can do the most amazing thing today. I'm sure tomorrow you'll figure out a few ways how you can make it even better, and really accepting that, internalizing those things. And then I have daily routines, weekly routines, like daily routine of reflect, ask yourself good questions, learn from the good and the bad, because everything is a lesson. Do more of the good things, do less of the bad things, figure out ways how to overcome the bad things, and like daily improvement, becoming 1% better than yesterday. And so it's a whole bunch of different things that we go through and we layer one on top of another to develop that failure is an excellent thing mindset.
Oh, I was going to ask, so 6 months ago, I wouldn't have understand what you said when you said about beta and mindfulness. And so I would just share for the listeners something that I've experienced, and maybe you've experienced something the same way. We're human beings, not human doings. And so when you're doing, like I used to do, and you're not just letting yourself be and meditating and getting into that higher brainwave state, sometimes when you do that, when you let yourself be and you let go of the outcome, things just start to happen. And that's like synchronicity. And I've had a guy named Sky Nelson on the podcast a couple of times talking about synchronicity. So if we just let things go a little bit more and not try to control the outcome and kind of go with the flow a little bit more, I think we start to see things really happening. And another thing is going back and looking at all the other times that you quote unquote failed. And how did it turn out? You're still here. What did you learn from it? How did that lead to a success in your life? So that's the reflection that you're talking about. If you're just doing and never reflecting on things, you're not learning from your experiences.
Yeah. And I mean, in all honesty, like I said, when you reflect, a lot of people journal, a lot of them. But that's where the whole thing ends. They vent it out, they write it down, and then they stop there. Like you have to take it to the next step, which is, okay, what are the lessons that I can learn from this? And how can I figure out ways to overcome the struggles? Now, do I know myself? Can I Google? Can I buy a book? Can I hire a coach? Can I find a consultant? Can I outsource? There's plenty of ways how you can overcome, depending how fast, what are your resources, and so on. But then the crucial step is make an action plan.
Yeah.
So if today I missed a meal and because of that I've overeaten and well, the lesson could be, okay, I need to remind myself, and the action would be make a freaking reminder in your phone to remind you at 11 that, like it's time to start thinking about lunch, because if you go too far, you'll overeat again because your eyes will be hungry. Like, for example, so it's a 3-step thing.
Yeah. And it's taking personal responsibility.
Yes.
Right.
And what you said, you set the goal, but then you let it go. I mean,
right.
Being focused on the goal and not doing the right process to get to that goal, that's stupidity.
Right.
Like when you set a goal, figure out a process that is aligned with reaching that goal. Now, if you don't know how, find somebody who does. If I want to lose, again, I know with this weight thing, but if I want to lose 10 pounds in a month, now maybe I can find a resource online, or I can go to a health expert who will tell me exactly, okay, Miha, we need to decrease your calorie intake by so much every day. So here is your meal plan, or this is what you have to throw out of your regular meal plan, and you are at the calorie that you need to be, and we will add a little bit of exercise and this and this. And so they make a plan that will get you there. And now you can do it by yourself, or you can find it somewhere outside of you.
Well, yeah, I think that's true, because like my mom, she's 77. She gets up every morning at like 4 or 5 and works out for a couple hours, and then she eats breakfast and she goes for a 7 or 8 mile walk. And I don't do that. She's like, well, why not? You just get up and you just do it. Okay, well, she's a self-starter. You've got to know yourself, and you've got to know what's going to get you there. And sometimes investing in a coach or finding an accountability partner, setting alarms on your phone may not work for you. You might need to be accountable to somebody else. So you've got to know yourself.
First thing, you need to understand what's the why behind it, an emotional why. Then it's so much easier to overcome things. And sometimes you have to look deeper. I mean, one of my ex-girlfriends, she was a heavy smoker. And then we were all telling her, you need to stop. Like she was coughing and this and that, and nothing helped, especially not the logical explanations like, ooh, how much money you will save. But then one time, some lady that she highly respected said to her, and like this girlfriend, she was like very how you appear on the outside. She was very involved into that. That was really important to her. And this lady said to her that she really stinks. Guess what? She stopped smoking.
Yeah.
So you need to find an emotion that is higher or more painful than what you're getting from not doing it. Because pain is by far the best motivator for change, innovation, and so on. So you have to counter that. You have to find something. Not achieving needs to be more painful than doing what you are doing, and by that not achieving the goal. So every time when I'm working with my clients and when we're setting goals, we always try to figure out a positive emotional connection. The stronger, the better. When I look at my two whys, the big whys behind everything that I do, I get chills, I get goosebumps. That's how I know that I'm really, and I have no problem waking up in the morning, doing my thing. I don't have to do any of this. I mean, I had a very successful exit from my last startup. And even if I count that out, I live here in Eastern Europe. Life is super cheap here. I can have one coaching client and I'm like already making 3 or 4 times more than the average person here. It's about my two whys. One is Failures Anonymous, which is a nonprofit that I'm trying to set up to really help with breaking up the taboo and helping people who are going through failure, AA kind of thing, just for failure.
That's a good idea. Failures Anonymous. Yeah. I love that.
And then the second one is, like we talked before you started recording, my work with animal rescue. And that's why I do what I do. I don't need much. I don't need fancy helicopters and Ferraris and like, I don't need any of that. But it's those two whys that just keep pushing. And actually, the more I do of these interviews and the more I talk about my why, the more fired up I am. And the more I'm like, I need to grow, I need to scale. Just for the animal rescue, I need billions every month. There are just so many animals around the world who need help. And then children and the elderly, like I want to do so much. And so if I want to do that, I need the money. And now I need to get that money. So you have to find that bridge. And I'll give you another example. A client of mine he was a solopreneur, more like a copywriter. And his wish was to be big in the local politics. And that has nothing to do with the business side. But if you want to be big in the politics, well, you buy your way in much faster than you work your way in. I mean, you can do a whole lot, but if you give them some money to the people above you, they will be your best friends. I mean, we all know about the politics, that it's all about the money. So that's how we bridge the gap, because he wasn't comfortable by growing his business because there was no higher purpose behind it. And for him, it was the politics. And he did it. And he then entered the politics, got super disappointed because it wasn't what he wanted. But you get the idea. Like, you need something. If the goal itself doesn't motivate you, then you need to find something beyond it. Why most people stop smoking when they get kids? Why most people get healthier? Well, when the doctor says you might die tomorrow and things like that. So instead of waiting for that wake-up call, for something super painful to happen to be given to you from the outside, you can do some inner work and just take a piece of paper and a pen and just start figuring out, like, who the hell am I? And what do I really want? What's that purpose, the why, the motivation? And when I do this exercise with my clients, the first iteration is usually more like the Miss Universe thing, like, oh, I want to save the world and do this and that. But then, when I see that there's a huge disconnect, they write it out, but the way they explain it, you see that there's no emotions behind it. And then I start challenging them and calling them on their bullshit. And really, usually then we get to what is the essence. And, I have a friend who all his life, he dreamt about driving a BMW, and he bought it a few years ago. And then another one. every single time when I see him enter his car, like his eyes sparkle. It's love at the first sight. If that turns you on, go for it. Buy two more. You just have to live in alignment with who you are. And if that's having a big house or a swimming pool or a fancy car, go for it. And if that's helping the children or building hospitals in Africa, go for it. Just figure out what you really deeply care about and stop, just take the society and the norms and whatever away from that equation.
What you're explaining is all about what this movement I started called the Onward Movement is about. It's like it's like discovering your authentic self. What do you really want? Not what society thinks you should want. And then letting go of your fears, the fear of judgment, fear of failure, so that you can pursue the life of your dreams. And one of the things that I've struggled with since I left the working for the military is with money, because it's like I've never really asked for somebody to invest in me. The government just told me my salary and I that I got paid, and I never had to come up with a rate or whatever. So now that I'm coaching and even hosting this podcast, by the time this publishes, I'll have over 100 interviews published. I'm not charging anything for people to listen to my podcast. And then I hadn't really been treating my business like a business because of my relationship with money. But I like what you said about, if I want to impact more lives, you need
more money.
Do it. And money's not bad. If I get more money, I'm not going to go buy an airplane and a Ferrari and, a huge
money
house.
is just a tool. Just like Facebook, just like Instagram, just like your phone, it's just a tool. It's not good. It's not bad. It's not evil. It's not whatever. It's what you do with it. And now if you're a good person,
yep,
you'll do more good. If you're a bad person, you'll do more bad. And that's it. And now I lost what I wanted to say, but never mind.
That's okay. No, you've said so much. It's really helpful. I love everything that you've talked about. Tell us about so you've got the Failures Anonymous, which I love. I love that idea.
Well, that one is still very early stage. We did a few in-person test runs in a few countries here in Europe, and the feedback was just absolutely amazing. So I know it's something I have to do, but it will take me a while.
It is. Once you have that, let me know. Come back and let me know, because I'm sure it would work. It'll work all over the world, because so many people are just so hard on themselves about failure, and you got to just look at it so differently, like we've talked about. And then your animal rescue. How do people find you? What if somebody wanted to rescue one of your dogs?
Oh, very easy. You go to Google and you type in the search bar, you type fail coach, and I'm still the only fail coach in this world. So everything, and then they can go to YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, whatever is their preferred method, and just reach out.
Does your LinkedIn, I haven't checked you out on LinkedIn, does it say you're a failure coach?
Yes, fail coach.
I love it.
And proud to be, when after my exit, what do I do? And I just jumped into helping people. And then I realized how much I love that and how much richer I feel on the inside when you help others and not when you do things just for yourself. But my thinking was, when you don't know how to do things, then you go and you teach. That was kind of like my mindset, So coaches, gurus, they're all fake, and they have no idea about the real life. They're just good in marketing. But then, now I'm about to become a coach. And then I said, you know what? F it. If I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this right. The only way to achieve success faster is through being good with failure. Anybody who's in business for more than a day, they know that you have roadblocks and failures and all of that ahead of you. So you can try to avoid it, but that ain't gonna happen, or you can embrace it. And so if you want to walk, you first need to learn how to crawl. So if you want success, you first develop good, healthy relationship with failure.
Let me say something here. I'm going to give an example, and somebody might look at it as a failure. I look at it differently. So let's say somebody's starting a business and they want to go down path A, and they start going down path A, but then nothing bad really happens, but they just realize path A isn't where they want to go. So they pivot and go to path B. but they've told everybody that they're going down path A. So they look at it as a failure to change to a different path because I told everybody I was going to go down path A and I didn't finish it. I'm a failure. That's a pivot. That's part of life. That's part of figuring out where you really want to go. And all the people that have been successful at creating something like your Failures Anonymous, you just didn't start down that path. You've been down a lot of different paths to get there. So that's just a mindset issue over failure that I see a lot where people think, oh, I just couldn't start because if I start down path A and I figure out that's wrong, then everyone's going to think I'm a failure.
Yeah, well, they can think whatever they want. I mean, that should be the mindset. I tried so many different things in my life. Some I liked, some I didn't. I mean, how can I know if I don't try it?
Right.
I mean, I don't know, here in Europe, a lot of people who, especially here in Eastern Europe, they didn't have access to seafood. So the only seafood that they know is that white thing, like fish and chips, breadcrumbs. Mm-hmm. And usually that was not done correctly, very oily. And they say, I don't like fish. I don't like seafood. Or have you ever tried something outside of that white caught in breadcrumbs? Well, no. But how do you know then? Like, go ahead, try it. I mean, and everything in life is like that. If you don't know, try it. And you can't know if you didn't experience it. So go ahead, experience a whole bunch of things, do some reflections. Don't judge up front. Judge later. Later, check in with yourself. How do I feel? I tried this thing. Oh, that didn't make anything tick in me. Okay, just don't do it again. Go try something else. I mean, it's that simple.
It is. I love this interview. I hope you come back. And once you start your Failures Anonymous.
Perfect. I will. Thank you, Emily.
I love Miha's attitude about failure. And I think as we start to plan out our 2021, I mean, this is a time of year when we reflect, we look at what we accomplished in 2020 and start thinking about what we want to do in 2021. Don't let fear of failure hold you back. Live your life with no regrets. I'll give you an example of how fear of failure was holding me back, and I'm not going to let it in 2021. I really wanted to get a camper and tour the country. There's so many places I want to see. And I guess it's not really fear of failure, but it's like fear of what if the camper breaks down? Or what if I'm scared of being alone? It's fear. And that was holding me back. And then I realized I don't want to be taking my last breaths and wish that I had done that. So in 2021, I'm buying the camper and I'm going to tour the country. Fortunately, I can still host my podcast from the road, and I can still lead the Onward Movement, and I can still conduct the Onward Accelerator coaching program. I can do it all from the road, and I'm not going to let fear hold me back. What are you going to do? Look fear in the eye and don't let it stop you. Have a happy new year, and thank you for your support.